Um, then, in terms of resources, the things that have influenced you and that have formed you, what would be, if you can give me three resources that people can go after also to read? You mentioned Jose Marti. If you could say something about Jose Marti, and also other resources, either books or movies or places or people or movements. What can you give us?
Well, I'm a good son of Cuba, so obviously I would say Jose Marti, and that's where I begin. And his writings, especially while he lived in the United States, were highly, highly influential. I mean, the phrase that we all use, living in the belly of the beast, that's one of his most famous quotes. But three, but for the average person who may not be Cuban and may not want to read Jose Marti, I would say if you want to just begin, a movie that I would watch right off the bat is the movie Romeo, which by what's his name, Julia. His name escapes me right now. But he plays the lead role of Romeo, and it's the story of the life of Oscar Romero, a man who was against liberation theology in the beginning of his life, and because of committing his life to the poor and to the hungry and to those who were disadvantaged, he made his conversion to liberation. So that's a nice way of visually seeing what liberation theology is. So I would begin maybe there. I would read some of the books dealing with the civil rights movement. James Cone has an excellent one on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I think it's called Martin, Malcolm, and America: The Dream and the Nightmare. That shows a good way of organizing and how different styles of organization has helped. And it pretty much, I think, really reveals how liberation theology took root in the United States within the black community. And of course, another book that would have to be read is the works of Gustavo Gutierrez, Theology of Liberation. I mean, that kind of becomes the Martyr Carter of this whole theological movement. So those are the three right off the top of my
Right.
head. And of course, you asked me for three, and I will say four.
Right.
And also, in an act of shameless self-promotion, I've written a couple of books on liberation theology and on praxis, and I would offer those up as well.
Which one would you choose from your books?
Well, probably you asked me which one. Again, I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
The book that has been my bestseller, the one that most people have read concerning my works, is Reading the Bible from the Margins, which was written from a freshman class, and it was, how do you read the Bible from the perspective of disenfranchisement? And then the second book is kind of like a take on that, and also, and it's called Doing Christian Ethics from the Margins, which is more of the praxis part. Both books won national awards, and both books are my top selling books. Most people know me either through one of those two books.
Can you say a little bit about them? What is the underlying argument there, and how you develop it a little bit?
Yeah, well, in the first book, Reading the Bible from the Margins, basically what I do is that I look at different marginalized community in the United States, specifically African Americans, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Asian American, LGBT communities, Native Americans, and through those eyes, I approach the biblical text and I try to interpret different important passages through those eyes. Which is a very different reading than the normative reading that we get at a seminary or at a school of theology. In the second book, Doing Christian Ethics from the Margins, it becomes a move away from the normative way ethics is done and a return to an earlier way U.S. Americans used to do ethics, and that was praxis-based. And I look at certain issues, and then using the hermeneutical circle of seeing, analyzing,
Judging.
acting. I use that circle. I expand it a little bit more, and then every issue we look at, we go through that circle together.
Okay. And what would be then? What would be your what are your main worries today as you look at the world, and what are your dreams? What are your hopes?
Well, I guess one of my major worries today is how co-opted the church has become by both capitalist paradigms and by U.S. hegemony, in where in the United States to be a Christian has come to be known as being a right-wing conservative Republican that believes that Jesus was a capitalist and that God's whole plan for humanity is along those paradigms. That the faith has been so co-opted that empire and faith are the same thing. I think that's my major concern, and even to begin to unravel that, you are quickly dismissed as being a radical, a non-Christian, a heretic, satanic, and the words go on. So that's my major concern that I'm seeing for the future. What's my greatest hope? In the last book I wrote, I say I have no hope. I don't see this fixing in my lifetime. I see the rich getting richer. I see the poor getting poorer. I see greater degradation of the environment. I really see a total collapse of economic systems, and I see oppression only expanding as some of the rulings coming from the Supreme Court and some of the laws being passed by Congress are restricting more and more freedoms. So I am hopeless. Now when I say that, I need to clarify. Hopelessness does not mean despair. And hopelessness does not mean that I do nothing. Quite the contrary. Hopelessness becomes the push towards praxis. And here's what I tell my students. Do you fight for justice because you think you're going to win? Or do you fight for justice because God has called you to live a life of justice? If it's the first one, then don't bother because you're not going to win. But if it's the second one, you have no choice but to fight for the just cause, even if you are going to lose and you know you're going to lose. But in my hopelessness, if I'm going to be like Father Abraham and hope against all hope, that glimmer of hope that I might have will happen if the church lives up to the message of liberation that Jesus proclaims. And as long as the church remains silent or asleep in the light, then my hopelessness will continue.
Right. So as a last question then, you said something here at the center. I don't know if I can disclose it, but you mentioned that you type with one finger.
Yeah.
So how this boy who was a D and F student and now has gone, how this boy came all the way to still typing with one finger and write and being active and do the work that he does?
Yeah. The hand of the living God is upon me, and the Spirit has filled me to the point to fight for justice, and all the obstacles that have prevented me from any type of success. As you've been hearing me speak, you notice I have a funny accent, so speaking is not my strong point. You notice, as you mentioned, I write my books with one finger, but those obstacles become my greatest strength, because what I do is not, because I had the privileges to do it. I do this because I have no other choice with my life. I have dedicated my life to Jesus. I have dedicated my life to the gospel message. I have dedicated my life to the message of liberation. And therefore, whatever it takes, by any means possible, I will fight for those things.
Professor Lazar, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.